Ami Kajai, Balmai Kajai, Shimari Lasidi Vikajai, Sumaveda Bhakta, Friend Kajai, Go, Premananda, Hari Hari Go. All glories the assembled devotees, all glories the assembled devotees, all glories the assembled devotees, all glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Gaur Premananda, Hari Hari Go. Alrighty. So we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 8th canto, chapter 7, text 1, entitled Lord Shiva Saves the Universe. We should read the chapter summary first. So, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So I'm going to read the chapter summary of Lord Shiva Saves the Universe by Drinking Poison. The summary of the 7th chapter is as follows. As described in this chapter, the Supreme Personality of Godhead appeared in his incarnation as a tortoise, dove deep into the ocean to carry him under a mountain on his back. At first, the churning of the ocean produced Kalakuta poison. Everyone feared this poison, but Lord Shiva satisfied them by drinking it, with the understanding that when the nectar was generated from the churning. Is there incense burning somewhere? Because it's just on the other side of the Vyasa-san. There's a no. Just take it outside, please. Thank you. With the understanding that when the nectar was generated from the churning, they would share it equally, the demigods and the demons brought the Vasuki to be used as a rope for the churning rod. But by the expert arrangement of the Supreme Personality of God, the demon held a snake near the mouth, whereas the demigods held the tail of the great snake. Then with great endeavor, they began pulling the snake in both directions. Because the churning rod under a mountain was very heavy, it was not held by any support in the water. It sank into the ocean, and in this way the prowess of both the demons and demigods was vanquished. The Supreme Personality of Godhead then appeared in the form of a tortoise and supported him under a mountain on his back. Then the churning resumed with great force. As a result of the churning, a huge amount of poison was produced. The Prajapatis, seeing no one else to save them, approached Lord Shiva and offered him his prayers full of truth. Lord Shiva is called Ashutosh because he is very pleased if one is a devotee. Therefore, he easily agreed to drink all the poison generated by the churning. The goddess Lautoka, the wife of Lord Shiva, was not at all disturbed when Lord Shiva agreed to drink the poison, for she knew Lord Shiva's prowess. Indeed, she expressed her pleasure at this agreement. Then Lord Shiva gathered the devastating poison, which was everywhere. He took it in his hand and drank it. After he drank the poison, his neck became bluish. A small quantity of the poison dropped from his hands to the ground, and it is because of this poison that there are poisonous snakes, scorpions. You have scorpions here, right? It's not poison, the nice scorpions. Scorpion. I'm not sure about that. I heard some devotee got hit by a scorpion. I heard it. Toxic plants and other poisonous things in this world. Okay, so we are reading text 1. So please repeat. Shri Shuguhacha Te Naga Rajam Amanshriya Bola Bhagena Vasukim Pariviya Gira Tasmin Netram Abdim Mudhanvitaha Arebire Suraya Yatta Amritarte Urudvaha Shishukuvacha Te Nagaraja Mamrancha Halabhagina Vasukim Apariviya Girho Tasmin Netram Abdim Mudan Vitaha Arebire Surayata Amatarte Kurudvaham Shishikovacha Te Nagarajaman Mantriya Palapagin Vasukim Pariviya Girho Tasmin Netram Abdim Mudan Vitaham Arebire Surayata Amritarte Kurudvaha Shishukovacha Te Nagaraja Mamantriya Palavagena Vasukim Parirviya Garau Tasmin Netram Abdim Mudan Vitachon Arebire Surayata Amritarte Kurudvaha. Okay. Shri Shukuvacha, Shri Shukadeva Goswami said, Te, all of them, the demigods and demons, Nagarajam, the king of the Naga snakes. Amantriya, inviting or requesting. Phalabhagena, by promising a share of the nectar. Vasukim, the snake Vasuki. Avadivya, encircling. Gadao, Mandura mountain. Tasmin, unto it. Nedram, the churning rope. Abdim, the ocean of milk. Muda'an mitachah, all surcharged with great pleasure. Are bire, began to act. Suraha, the demigods. Yataha, with great endeavor. Amrita arte, for gaining nectar. Guru udvaha, O King Parikshit, best of the Kurus. Translation. Shukadev Goswami said, O best of the Kurus, Maharaj Parikshit, that demigods and demons summoned Vasuki, king of the serpents, requesting him to come and promising to give him a share of the nectar. They coiled Vasuki around Mandara mountain as a churning rope, and with great pleasure they endeavored to produce nectar by churning the ocean of milk. So there's no purport to this text, nor the next two or few texts, so we'll keep reading until we get to the purport. So next text, text 2. Hari Pushartas Jagrahe Purvam Devastato Bhavam. The personality of God at Ajita grasped the front portion of the snake, and then the demigods followed. Text 3. Tannai Chandai Chipataku Mahapurusha Chishtitam Anagranino Ganimo Vayambucham Aherangam Amangalam Swadhyaya Shuddha Sampana Pratyata Janma Karma Pakhi. The leaders of the demons thought it wise to hold the tail, the inauspicious portion of the snake. Instead, they wanted to hold the front, which had been taken by the personality of God and the demigods because that portion was auspicious and glorious. Thus the demons, on the plea that they were all highly advanced students of Vedic knowledge and were all famous for their birth and activities, protested they wanted to hold the front of the snake. So purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Srila Prabhupada Ki. The demons thought that the front of the snake was auspicious and that catching hold of that portion would be more chivalrous. Moreover, Daityas must always do the opposite of demigods. That is their nature. We have actually seen this in relation to our Krishna consciousness movement. We are advocating cow protection and encouraging people to drink more milk and eat palatable preparations made of milk. But the demons, just to protest such proposals, are claiming that they are advanced in scientific knowledge as described here by the words Swadhyaya Shruta Sampanaha. They say that according to their scientific way, they have discovered that milk is dangerous and that the beef obtained by killing cows is very nutritious. This difference of opinion will always continue. Indeed, it has existed since days of yore. Millions of years ago, there was the same competition of demons as a result of their so-called Vedic knowledge studies, preferred to hold the side of the snake near the mouth. The Supreme Personality of Godhead thought it wise to catch hold of the dangerous part of the snake and allow the demons to hold the tail, which was not dangerous, but because of the competitive desire, the demons thought it wise to hold the snake near the mouth. If the demigods were going to drink poison, demons would resolve. Why should we not share the poison and die gloriously by drinking it? In regard to the words, Swadhyaya Shruta Sampanaha Prakyata Janma Karnamavihi, another question may be raised. If one is actually educated in Vedic knowledge, is famous for performing prescribed activities, and has been born in a great aristocratic family, why should he be called a demon? The answer is that one may be highly educated and may have been born in an aristocratic family, but if he is godless, if he does not listen to the instructions of God, then he is a demon. There are many examples in history of men like Hiranyakashipu, Ravana, and Kamsa, who were well educated, who were born in aristocratic families, and were very powerful and chivalrous in fighting, but who, because of deriding the Supreme Personality of Godhead, were called Rakshasas, or demons. One may be very well educated, but if he has no sense of Krishna consciousness, no obedience to the Supreme Lord, he is a demon. That is described by the Lord himself in the Bhagavad Gita, in the 7th chapter, text 15. Namam duskritino muda prabhajante naranamamayaya pritakyana surmavam ashukaha. Those miscreants who are grossly foolish, lowest among mankind, whose knowledge is stolen by illusion and partake of the atheistic nature of demons, do not surrender it to me. Asuram bhavam refers to not accepting the existence of God or the transcendental instructions of the personality of Godhead. Bhagavad Gita clearly consists of transcendental instructions imparted by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, but asuras, instead of accepting these instructions directly, make commentaries according to their own whimsical ways and mislead everyone without profit even for themselves. One should therefore be very careful of demoniac, godless persons. According to the words of Lord Krishna, even if a godless demon is very well educated, he must be considered a Muda, Naradama, and Mayaya Aprita Gyana. Heavy stuff here. So, Om Gana Timaranda Shah, Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Viditam Yena, Tasmai Shikadaveda Maha. So let's talk about the word demons first. So, in the modern world, see, Prabhupada also was brought up in in the early 1900s in Bengal. He was born in 1896. And basically different words had different, let's say, purports to them or implicit meanings to them. And so the word demon, was not that heavy when Prabhupada was brought up. It was something like, you're a demon because you're not worshiping Krishna. But at least in America, or in Fiji, when you use the word demon, it generally means, because we've seen so many science fiction films, especially, made with Star Wars and all these other films. It means people with horns and pitchforks, right? Isn't that, when you use that word, immediately you get that impression. Demons. Like a devil or something like that. So we have to be really careful how we use this word and understand the context in which Prabhupada is used it. Words actually get more or less, let's say, heaviness according to the context in which they're used and according to the country and the place and the circumstance in which they're used. For example, when I was brought up, if we called someone a rascal, it wasn't such a big thing. There was even a TV show called The Little Rascals. Anyone ever see that TV show? No? The TV show. Just like, it means you're cute. The word rascal means that he's real cute. I mean, I was called a rascal so many times. But it wasn't something like, major insults. So when I went to India the first time, I used that word in India, and I almost got killed. Because if you call someone a rascal in India, it's like the biggest insult. It's less to call them a demon. Demon? Okay, I'm a demon. But if you call someone a rascal, it's, woo, you're finished. And I almost died that day. I learned my lesson very quickly. So words are understood according to the context of where they are and context of where they're spoken and when they're spoken. So that's a very interesting thing. So we have to be careful when we're dealing with the general public when we use this word rascal, or we use the word demon, actually demon, even more so, because it makes it sound like we got accused by the people who are against cults. In the early days of the movement, there were these groups, and they're still there, the anti-cult movement. And this movement was formed because many young people were joining religious or not religious or whatever organizations, and their parents were very upset. So the parents, they wanted to kidnap the children and what they call deprogram them from wherever they were doing. So many devotees, sometimes they got kidnapped by their parents, locked in a room for many days, not being allowed to sleep. They used sleep deprivation. And then they would bring a beautiful prostitute in front of them. Seriously, this happened. This poor boy, he hadn't slept for like 2 weeks. And this girl comes out. Or they would just like starve the person and bring out some meat. Or they would blaspheme Prabhupada, blaspheme the movement, to try to destroy people's faith. And a lot of that was based upon what we would call fanaticism. How they would see us as being very fanatic. And in fact, in the early days of the movement, we were fanatic. Sometimes you would look at your parents and say, demons. Actually, every time I went to visit my mother, I would take a brahmachari to protect me from her. And I wouldn't even look at her face. It was just like, look at her feet and always chant. As she was talking, I'd go, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Demon. So there's this really divisive consciousness, us and them. Demons. Karmic poison. And even karmic clothes. If you didn't have a dhoti on, if you let you wear pants, like we used to call them karmic clothes. Which is really interesting. Devotee clothes and karmic clothes. So this is the whole movement, So, of course, we do find many demons wearing dhotis, and many devotees wearing I don't want to say karmic clothes, Western clothes, right? Actually, even Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur sometimes would have this nice shirt, coat, pant, and everything like that. Not pants, but he would wear this jacket. It was like westernized to impress people for preaching. And then even, it was interesting, when the devotees first started distributing books in what we call Western clothes, or what the devotees call plain clothes. That was another word for the clothes, plain clothes. Because the reason they use the word plain clothes because it refers to police. Because the police have a uniform. And when the police aren't in their uniform, they're, secretly detectives or something. They're called plain clothes police. You have the same expression here? So the devotees, when they weren't in their uniform, were in plain clothes. In other words, were hiding from the world. And they would put wigs on so they would look like normal lunches, normal demons. And so what happened is that one devotee, actually one of the leaders of the movement, went to Prabhupada and said, the devotees are getting contaminated by wearing army clothes. And they really told Prabhupada, this is actually true, they did that. They told Prabhupada, they're getting contaminated by dressing up in Western clothes. Like clothes would contaminate you. This is like, oh my God, it's like the coronavirus is inside the clothes or something like that. So it's like, what is the consciousness? So they actually worked on Prabhupada said, yes, they should stop wearing those clothes. Because the devotees were more fanatic than Prabhupada. So then one of the devotees who was in charge of book distribution, it was Ramaswar, went to Prabhupada and he said, Prabhupada, if they don't wear Western clothes, the book distribution will drop by 50% or more. And Prabhupada said, let them dress anyway, as long as they're clean, they don't look too much like hippies. So the point is there was this radical mood in the beginning of the movement, like demons. Demons. Like that, so bad association, demons. And also, people were prohibited from going to the university and studying in those days, because that's a slaughterhouse. It is, but one has to be careful. Sometimes devotees preach in slaughterhouses. In one of the temples I'm in charge of in Slovenia, they actually go and distribute books during the Christmas marathon in the slaughterhouses. So we even go, and we're very merciful. We go to the slaughterhouses. So anyway, so if a devotee, God forbid, went to the university, they were finished, they're done, or contaminated. You practically have to spray them with anti-disinfectant, disinfectant when they came to the temple. Okay, we have this coronavirus. Now I was just talking to devotees in North Carolina. We had this Abhishek during Gaur Purnima, so they sprayed everyone's hands before they touched the concha. Well, that's true. You got to do that. And I told them to get a thermometer, measure everybody's temperature. We just had to cancel the Sunday feast because it's so bad. Yeah. So anyway, so it was like that. Someone went. God forbid they went to and even worse if they got married. That was just like, wow, they blooped from the Hare Krishna movement. Isn't it? I remember, one time I talked with someone, I said, what happened to so-and-so, Prabhu? He got married. Poor soul. We'll see him next lifetime. Because there's no loss of diminution. He was a brahmachari for so many years. Done so much nice service. My condolences, Prabhu. And I remember the first time I visited one of the householders, I was a brahmachari, and he actually had deities in his house. I said, you can have deities in your house in such a fallen condition like this? That was impossible. There was no conception that being outside of the temple, you could be Krishna conscious. This was no one even thought about it. Not no one, but very few people thought about it. And because Prabhupada also gave some examples that were taken out of context, like the stock market example. As Prabhupada said, if you want to invest in stocks, you'll do much better if you're actually in the market, the stock market, rather than, because nowadays they do it online. So, and Prabhupada said the same thing in the temple. He said, you can be Krishna conscious, but it would be very difficult outside. And so, I was just listening to a class where the devotees, it was in Hawaii, and Ramaswar was talking to Prabhupada, and he was saying, Prabhupada, they say that they can become Krishna conscious if they're not living in the temple. And Prabhupada said, yes, they can. He said, and Prabhupada said, Don't they have to go out and distribute books? Yeah, that's how Roman source spoke, yeah. The Prabhupada said, are they following the regulated principles? Yes, Prabhupada, but, they're not joining the Sankirtan party. Prabhupada said that as long as they're following the regulated principles and chanting, they can become Krishna. So anyway, so this is the whole point. So we have to be very careful about this use of the word demon when dealing with people. Although we should understand practically what a demon is. And if we want to understand practically what a demon is, non-devotee. Because it's dangerous to use this word too much, because then it really becomes implanted in your psychology, and every time, let's say you're going to teach in school, Shuta, and then you're teaching all these demon kids. Because you'll actually see things like that. All these little demons. They are. No. We should see, actually a devotee should really see everyone as a potential devotee. As a devotee, but just they've forgotten their Krishna consciousness. We can see they're acting demoniacally. Actually, we should make that distinction. They're acting improperly, acting demoniacally, but they're not, actually there's no demons. In a higher sense, there are no demons. It's just people are bewildered, the souls are bewildered, and they're acting like that. So we don't hate anyone, because usually you use the word demon and you hate the person. So we don't want to evoke this mood of animosity, of hate towards anyone. In fact, the Upanishad says, Yastu sarvani bhutani atmanaivaram vachavi sarvabhuteshu chatmanam tatona vidgupshta. We don't hate anyone because we see everyone as part and parcel of Krishna. Connected. We're all brothers and sisters. I think that's a much better consciousness than demons and devotees. But we understand they're acting demoniacally. So what do we mean by acting demoniacally? Therefore, we have to consult the 16th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. We could do an analysis of each person to see if they fit in. It's just like you go to the doctor's office, you do an examination analysis. Do they have the coronavirus, fever, cough, difficulty breathing, like that. So you do a diagnosis. 16th chapter is meant to do a diagnosis. But not only of others. Sometimes we think we want to point the finger. He's a demon. The demon poison has entered you. You're going to Cambridge. Because nowadays, actually, a lot of devotees are going to university. A lot of devotees are getting education. And Prabhupada wanted that because, why did Prabhupada want it? Because we have to preach to intelligent people. And if we don't get the education, then we won't even know the tail end of the snake from the mouth of the snake. Like sometimes I'm talking to people and I tell people I'm going to Fiji. They say, Fiji? Where's that? I say, the South Pacific. They say, where is that? It's in the globe. And they say, a globe? I didn't know the earth was round. I thought it was flat. I mean, even in our movement, we have these people called the flat earthers. You know what flat earthers are? They believe the earth is flat. I mean, this went out a long time ago. The earth is flat. In the Vedic literature, it describes the earth as a globe. It's not flat. The interesting thing is that people have this whole misunderstanding of history. They think that when Columbus sailed to America, people were thinking the world was flat. They weren't. They understood the world was a globe. But there's devotees who actually say the world is flat. Stupid. or they get into what conspiracy theory. That means uneducated. So it's important for the devotees to have education because we got to preach. And the higher, the bigger the credentials we have, the more we can preach. Like Rasmi Hari, because of his position, he's able to preach to very high-class people, and he's getting people to go become doctors and nurses, right? You never said to people, don't get education. So get more education. Education is extremely important. Anyway, so let's talk about what it means to be a demon so we can do a diagnosis on ourselves. It's easy to point it out to others and just say, you are arrogant, prideful, angry, demon. No, I am arrogant, I am prideful, I am angry, I can't control my anger. That's not true. Anyway, but in Fiji, isn't it we find, let's talk about Fiji. So many times there's devotees that get angry at each other, do politics, or go on strike against the deities. I'm not going to serve you, Krishna, because I hate the temple president. Isn't it? Oh my God. I just that's demoniac. You got to figure out that's demon right there. Just like many years ago I was in Mombasa, and there were two groups in Mombasa, you probably remember this. And some of my disciples were members of one group, some were members of other group. So anyway, so I was doing a preaching program in Vaticano. And I invited my disciples, please come and see me. They said, I can't. It's the other group. I said, I'm there. I'm your guru. You don't want to see your guru? Not in those conditions, we don't want to see you, Guru Dave. I said, they're stupid. They still didn't listen. People just don't get it through their brains, their little tiny pea brains. I said, I even gave the example that if Ravana was holding a program and Prabhupada was there, I would go there. So you're thinking these devotees you're so angry at these devotees, you're thinking they're worse than Ravana. So this is demoniac consciousness and things like that. Anger, conceit, pride, all these different qualities. And of course, Krishna also gives this wonderful verse in the Bhagavad Gita about the demons knowing what to do, knowing what not to do, or not knowing what not to do. Prabhatim Chad, Liberty Chad, Vidura. Socham Napi, Chacharo, the Teshu, Vasacham, Teshu, Vidyate, right? 16:7, I believe. So the demons don't know what is to be done, what is not to be done. In other words, pious or impious activities. Neither cleanliness, nor good behavior, nor truthfulness do they know. So uncleanliness, untruthful, lying, politics, right? Sounds like Fiji, doesn't it? Sounds like Fiji, anyway. And, they think that this world is unreal, because the Fiji doesn't. People aren't educated enough in Fiji to think the world is unreal. They're just taking kava, they couldn't care less. Once in the mode of ignorance. If you're completely in the mode of ignorance, you're not a demon. You're just like a slug or a tree or something like that. You gotta have some passion to be a demon. So when they take the kava, I don't know if you could say they're actually, in one sense, but in another sense, they're not acting demoniacally. They're just dull. They're worse than demons. Actually, it would be a step up to become a demon. Because they're just inert like that. And then also the Gita, the 16th chapter, describes, this doesn't happen in Fiji, but these are like the sophisticated demons. They create horrible, unbeneficial works meant to destroy the world. Of course, you see this, like atom bombs and things like that are created by people. And all these weapons, now they have autonomous weapons. I'm going a little long. Autonomous weapons, I mean, they've created these weapons that don't even need a human being to fire. In other words, they have an airplane, it's called, a drone or whatever. The airplane will have weapons like bombs and everything like that, and they programmed it with artificial intelligence. So you can see, oh, you're a devotee, boom, kill you, enemy. This is demoniac. This is the same thing that was being taught to Prahlad Maharaj by Sandanamarka. Friends and enemies and how to conquer them. And even if you don't kill someone, just the idea of this friends and enemies stuff, where you use politics to conquer someone, like Prahlad Maharaj, he's my godbrother. Prahlad Maharaj, I always confuse the two, was taught how to deal with enemies. Enemies, you deal with them with sweet words. Oh, you're so nice. I could do that in Fiji a lot too. You're so nice, Prabhu. Would you like to cook for the deities? Sweet words, or you give someone a bribe. If you do some nice service, I'll give you $20. So, of course, in the government, there's a lot. Anyway, high position will make you in charge of cleaning the toilets. High position, or divide and conquer. Divide and conquer is a really big one that's used here, isn't it? You just tell someone, do you know what they said about you? Not true. And you know what they said? They don't like you. They're smiling to your face, but actually they hate you. And then, what is that? The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Isn't it? So divide and conquer, and then threats and arguments about the following. So, anyway, so these are different symptoms. Of course, Krishna also says in the Gita that they are bound by anxieties. In the 16th chapter, he talks about unlimited anxieties. Why are they in anxiety? Because they think that there's nothing after this life. Eat, drink, and be merry. That's another point made there. They think to gratify the senses at the end of life. They think that this world is unreal, producer of sex desire only. In other words, evolution. We're talking about evolution right here. So this is demoniac activities. However, we have to be expert enough to be able to bring these people to Krishna consciousness. Because this is basically almost everybody, even religious people. Once upon a time, I was visiting a monastery and preaching to monks. One of them later became a disciple. I was preaching to monks, and basically, most of their philosophy was impersonal. In other words, what is God? He's energy. He's love. But what is to say that God is love? He's loving. He's not love. He's loving. You understand? And then if you go to the Buddhists, who are considered a religion, right? It's the same thing. Most of the Buddhists. I'm not saying every single one of them. Just like Nirvishesha, Shunyavadi, Paschat, actually, the words used in Prabhupada's Pranam Mantra really get to the essence of what it is to be a demon. Nirvishesha, Shunyavadi. That means Nirvishesha means they don't know the distinctions between the different tattvas. Okay, I'll have to unpack that. In other words, they don't know the difference between Jiva Tattva, Vishnu Tattva, Shakti Tattva, the material energy. They think everything is one. And that's demoniac. Impersonalists are basically demoniac in mentality. So, anyway, so Nirvishesha and Shunyavadi means that basically Zero. Nothing is real, strawberry fields forever. So, or it also means, I mean, most Buddhists or modern people who accept Buddhism are more or less inclined towards atomism. You understand? Vaisheshika philosophy, atomism, which means that everything is different particles or even energy. You know, scientists nowadays are very much inclined towards Buddhism because when you actually delve down into the subatomic level, you discover there's no particles anymore, it's only waves of energy. That's called quantum mechanics, for those who want to impress others. So that's anyway, so that's a shunyavadi, basically. So anyway, so we have to be expert enough to explain to people using modern education, such as understanding, actually in the Bhagavatam it says, the more one understands the material energy, this is in the first canto of Bhagavatam, the more one understands the material energy, the more one actually has proven to himself or herself that there is a person who designed the material energy, there's God behind it. And that's my experience too, because I study science, and when I study microbiology, which is really interesting, that means what happens in the cell, then it just proves the existence of God. We talked about this the other day. It just proves that God exists. It proves there's a designer. So the more you study even the material, so it's important to utilize knowledge of the material energy in proving to people that God exists. Because we simply say, it says in the Vedic literatures, doesn't go very far. Because, what is that? Tarko pratisha shuddhina vivina. Even if you approach someone who believes in the Vedic literatures are multi-branched, isn't it? That's a verse from the Mahabharata. Tarko pratisha shuddhina vivina. One cannot understand the absolute truth even by studying the Vedas. Because even if you go to a Vedic scholar, you'll say, well, there's this God who says, well, what about the Shiva Purana? And what about the Rig Veda that just mostly hymns to Lord Indra? So you really have to know, you have to know why all the Vedas are pointing out to Krishna. You have to be expert in presenting the Vedas, expert in presenting scientific knowledge. A devotee should be well-branched, vidya avidya. Understand transcendental knowledge and also material knowledge. Even there's the example, I'll just finish up right now. With Lord Shiva, when he became Shankaracharya, he was preaching basically to the wife of a great scholar, some lady. And she wanted to talk to him about, I guess, romance. She wasn't interested in him, romance, but she wanted to have a discussion with him. And he had no experience of it. So he had to go to school. His school was quite interesting. Lord Shiva, Shankaracharya, went into trance, and he entered the body of a king that had just died. You know the story? And the king, after he sat up, I'm alive! And it was actually Shankaracharya inside. And then he experienced life as king. So then, after a little while, not that he just stayed there, because he had to get the knowledge, what it meant. It's not that if you have to, you should get the knowledge of sense gratification by enjoying your senses. It's not what I'm talking about. He said, yeah, what Shiva does, so why not me? I said, joy, go out tonight, to the karaoke club, So, and then after he experienced and understood, but nowadays we have so many books, you don't have to do it. So after he had understood it, he left the king's body, the king died again, and he went back, defeated the lady. He was able to have a discussion, defeated her, and she and her husband took sannyas. And that man became one of his Shankaracharya's chief followers. what was his name, the man's name? Shobha something, yeah, Shobha something. It's amazing I remember all this stuff. You know. Shows that once Krishna conscious, the brain still remains fresh when you get old. The body still gets wrinkles, but right. So anyway, so this is the point. We need to become expert, and don't go around denigrate people for being demons. Don't look at them as demons. Look at them as parts and parcel of Krishna, your brothers and sisters who are forgotten. And be careful, you know, what does it say? When you give instructions, be careful you don't give them too many instructions, because there's that statement, Upadesho vimurkanam prakopayana shantaya, that if you give a demon, a fool, good instructions, they just makes them angry. So you have to learn the art, like Narada Muni. When he was preaching, you know, the whole Puranjana story, he told it as a story. He said, once upon a time, O king, there was a king, just like you. It's not you, don't worry. Right? And then he convinced the king to take sannyas, or to renounce this world. He told the story of the Puranjana story, Navadware Pure Dehi, you know, the 9 gates of the body. So that's expertise in preaching. Sometimes we preach by metaphor, sometimes we preach directly, sometimes we do call people rascals. I mean, I was listening to a class of Prabhupada. He was walking on the beach with Mr. Patel, and he called him a rascal. But he had that close relationship. He could do that. You know, sometimes Prabhupada would call people a demon, but you have to have the discretion when to do it, and you can't see people as demons. It's the wrong thing insofar as people. Okay? I think we have to. And now, I'm not going to talk about the milk thing in the middle of the book. I very intelligently bore you that one. Anyway, so I can explain that too, but I'm not going to get into it. That's a whole other class. Okay, all glories to His divine grace, Srila Prabhupada, Ki Jai.